Aries 29, a celestial choir singing. This is my Mercury position. Mercury in Aries sometimes can have a really sharp tongue, quite an aggressive kind of approach to conversation sometimes. And this represents or expresses the sharpness of mind that goes along with an Aries Mercury. In my case, it's retrograde in the third house. It's hard to think of a more telling indicator, a symbol of analysis. I go over and over and over things again because my Mercury's retrograde. And in the third house, it's kind of good for thinking, isn't it? So I've got a very analytical turn of mind. And when I approached the meaning of life, shall we say, as one does at university, I read books, all the books of the day, and I listened to people and their ideas, and I had gone to church more forced than voluntarily when I was a kid, and I knew quite a bit about what was taught in the Bible. And it just didn't all check out. Nothing made sense to me. That there were clues, there were hints, there was a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but nothing actually came together cohesively. And I really wanted to understand what was going on here. Why is that such a mystery? Why is no one able to explain it all? And I think what we have to understand with this Aries 29 degree is that analysis alone, logical explanation, does not come up with the right answer when you're asking the question, what's the meaning of life? What's it all about? Analysis doesn't do it. And that's because analysis is only half of the brain. That part of us which analyzes things and thinks logically is the left half of the brain, physically. And the bit that actually puts it all together and understands, gets the kind of holistic sense of knowledge. That's the other side of the brain. So any attempt to understand the meaning of life through thought alone, through analysis, through scientific measurement alone, it must fail, because we've got two sides to the brain, and the meaning of life has to be a unification of both. That must be intuitively obvious, surely. And most of my friends became cynical about religion, and I think in the world today there are two polarizations. There's those people that believe in the word of the book without examination, even though the book, really, the books, all of them, they're inconsistent and difficult to believe. It must be metaphor. And metaphors are always going to be interpreted differently according to your own purposes and needs and trainings and all sorts of other ways of distorting clear thinking. So the book does not give it to me. And the other category of person would be those who throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, look, because religion is so badly taught, it must be wrong, fundamentally. So you've got these two polarized views, both of which don't really work. It's not okay just to believe what you're told. You're told lies. You're told propaganda. It's not okay to dismiss something as fundamental as whether or not there is God. You have to work that out. That's the biggest question of all, isn't it? So what happens when you look into that? And the operation of mind is not only important when approaching the spiritual questions in life, but also when approaching daily management. And it's the same mind that we're using. So for me, it became really clear that I wanted an explanation that works in all the realms, in the spiritual realm and the material world. When I was studying material world stuff, I trained in techniques like neuro-linguistic programming and other very kind of specific methods, astrology, of course, which helps us develop a different way of thinking. Now, it might be wrong, it might be right, that doesn't matter in this example. What happens is when you train in a certain knowledge system, you change the shape of your mind, you change the way you think, you change the expanded reach of your thoughts, and the depth of your thoughts, and the subtlety of your thoughts, and the way in which you piece things together. And eventually you try to come up with an harmonious sense of how it all works together. Now that harmony, in my mind, does not really come from much that you can do with your left brain. The one exception to that, I would say, in my experience, would be mathematics. I find that can reach the level of harmony that I find in music. But let's move on to that non-verbal method of music or dancing or gardening, the appreciation of beauty in nature, or that side of life which does not really count for much if you're analytical about it. And here we have the beginnings of the mystery of Aries 29. We're talking about some sense in which underneath everything, certainly what we think, what we feel, underneath it all is some harmony. It's like there's a note being sounded, or a chord is probably closer to the better metaphor. A chord is being sounded throughout the universe, throughout the whole cosmos, and everything is responding to that sound, and everything is creating that sound too. So the story of Aries 29 is really the celestial choir, isn't it? There's this sense of a group of beings producing a harmony. And Christian teaching does go into this. It labels this group of archetypes the cherubim. And the Sufi teaching is that these archetypal beings, they spend their whole eternal life singing the praises of God. Well, of course, as soon as you say something like that, a lot of people now are going to switch off the video when I've said that, because singing the praises of God, it sounds too religious for esotericists and mystics, and it sounds too mystical for Christians and so on. So a lot of people really haven't merged those two worlds together. But that is exactly what we need to do if we're actually to find out how to use spiritual principles in order to work out our path through life in terms of the path to happiness or the path to efficiency and success, whatever you're doing with your mind. And the idea of singing a note to get your mind to be in tune with what's going on underneath it all is absurd to most people. But that's what this degree is teaching, that we do need to tune in to the music of the spheres. We need to hear the universal melody if we're to rebalance our thinking and other processes of mind. And when we do this, then we find that it all actually makes sense. So in one very real sense, this is not metaphor, in one very real sense, if you learn to sing, if you learn to listen to music and to play music, especially with other people, if you train yourself to open up this facility of mind to appreciate what music is, then a deeper, a more subtle level of intelligence develops within you. Now this was my personal experience anyway. Before I read about the Sabian Symbols, I didn't have a singing voice when I was young, and I trained to sing because I fancied doing it, and I eventually learned to sing in tune. And the clarity of my thinking clearly changed. And bear in mind, my thinking was trained as a mathematician and as an accountant. I was relatively clear thinking in that analytical sense already. But when I actually learned to sing, there was something else happening. There was a clarity of understanding how it all hangs together. That there's an orchestra, and we're all contributing to that orchestra, and we produce clashings and bangings and horrible noises when we do this or in that place or with those people. And yet when we're in this place and we're doing that with these people, the melody is sweet. And this is metaphor. The melody we're talking about is harmonious involvement with life, with people, with yourself. That's the harmony of life, the sense of well-being, the sense of rightness. And it's not to do with being the same as everyone else. That doesn't produce beautiful music. If everyone's singing the same note, it doesn't sound very beautiful. So if we all follow the rules, do what we're told, and so on and so forth, so that we're the same as everyone else, it's just not worth it. It's not beautiful. But if I do this and you do that in response to what I've done, and I respond to you, and a third person comes and they add a whole different dimension to the music, and we just put all of our legitimate, authentic expressions, even passionate expressions, into the same orchestra, and we do that with sensitivity by listening to other people, then we produce a beautiful sound. I'm a member of a musical group, and mostly we just whack out loud sounds so that we just get out our emotions. But sometimes we listen to each other. We actually listen to what the other musicians are doing. And that's when the music's sweetest. And that's when you get this shiver of knowledge that you're in the presence of God. And that's what prayer does as well. When you sing the praises of God, you move into this alignment and you clear up your mind and your life becomes harmonious. Prayer is an expedient. The act of veneration and devotion, it's what you need to do to get it right. Life.